The Tuscan sun had teeth in August, but the fire that would consume Franco Cataneo's fortress burned far hotter, and it was meant for her. Danielle Yates had forgotten what it felt like to be herself. 647 days embedded in Franco Cataneo's organization. She'd been undercover nearly 2 years in total, long enough for her handler's voice to become the only one she trusted, and long enough for trust itself to become dangerous. 647 days of scrubbing marble floors that had witnessed executions, pouring wine for men who trafficked in suffering, smiling with empty eyes while her real identity. Special Agent Danielle Yates, FBI Organized Crime Unit, dissolved like morning mist over the Tuscan hills. The fortress perched on its hilltop like a medieval scar modernized with blood money. Security systems worth more than small nations. She'd memorized every camera blind spot, every guard shift change, every secret corridor built when the Medicis ruled Florence. The intelligence she'd transmitted back to Washington would dismantle the Cataneo Empire in one coordinated strike. 72 hours. Then the raid. Then she could remember who she was. Tonight was the summit. 5 families converging to negotiate territories, shipments, and the kind of peace that lasted only until someone saw profit in breaking it. Franco had orchestrated this for months, attempting to modernize the old blood oaths, to build something sustainable from centuries of violence. Danielle had watched him transform from the brutal enforcer in her case files into something more dangerous. A strategist, a visionary, still capable of violence but surgical about it. She hated that she'd started to understand him. Danielle. Rosa, the head housekeeper, touched her elbow. The older woman's face showed deeper worry lines tonight. Mr. Cataneo wants fresh espresso in his study. Now, please. He has business before the guests arrive. You know how he is. His study. During the summit preparations, Danielle had cleaned that room dozens of times, but never when Franco conducted actual business. The staff knew better than to intrude during those moments. She prepared the espresso service with practiced precision. Dark roast, no sugar, the way he preferred it. The kitchen hummed with caterers preparing the evening's feast. Through the window, she counted security personnel stationed around the grounds. More than usual. Far more. Something was wrong tonight. Carrying the silver tray, Danielle climbed the servants' staircase. Party sounds faded as she moved deeper into the fortress's private wings. The corridor stretched before her. Thick carpet, priceless art she dusted without truly seeing, sconces casting amber light across stone walls that had stood for 4 centuries. Light spilled from beneath the study door at the corridor's end. She knocked softly. "Leave it outside." Franco's voice carried an edge she recognized. Distraction. Tension. Danielle set the tray on the hall table and turned to leave. But something made her pause. Through the heavy door, voices rose. Franco and another man, unfamiliar, angry. The words were muffled through antique wood, but the tone was unmistakable. Accusation. Threat. "You think I don't know what you've done?" The stranger's voice climbed toward rage. "I think you should remember who you're addressing." Franco's response was ice over steel. Danielle forced herself to walk away. Whatever transpired in that room wasn't her concern. She had her own mission, her own questions demanding answers. Getting entangled in Franco Cataneo's immediate crises would only complicate everything she'd built over 647 days of careful deception. She'd just reached the staircase when the world tilted sideways. The explosion threw her forward, body slamming into stone hard enough to empty her lungs. Ears screaming with high-pitched whining. For a moment, she couldn't process the transition from normal to catastrophe. One breath, the hallway existed. The next, it was consuming itself. Smoke billowed from the study's direction. Flames licked at centuries-old tapestries. Priceless art lay shattered across the floor, frames twisted, canvas burning. Below, screams erupted from the gathering guests. Footsteps thundered in every direction. People running, shouting, desperate for exits and survival. Through the ringing in her ears, Danielle heard fire crackling. Hungry. Spreading. Alive. Her radio crackled. Her handler's voice cut through static. "Nightingale, report. Nightingale, if you're mobile, extract immediately. Do not engage. Preserve your cover and extract. Acknowledge. Multiple casualties. Danielle coughed through smoke. Cataneo's down, I can reach. Negative. I repeat, negative extraction order. Leave the target. That's a direct order, Agent Yates. Something in Peter Grant's voice triggered her instincts. The ones that had kept her alive in Detroit, in Kabul, in a dozen operations where hesitation meant death. Too calm, too controlled. Like he'd expected this. Agent Yates, extract now or you're compromised. Do you copy? She looked toward the study, toward the flames racing toward Franco Cataneo. Made a choice that would destroy everything she'd built. Copy that. She dropped the radio and ran toward the fire. The study was an inferno. Door hanging from twisted hinges, heat rolling out in waves that seared her lungs. Smoke burned her eyes, her throat. She yanked her apron over her mouth and pushed inside. Destruction everywhere. Furniture overturned, papers burning, the massive window blown out completely. Cold August wind fed the flames higher, making them dance like demons across what had been one of the finest private studies in Tuscany. And there, collapsed near the desk, blood streaming from a gash across his temple, was Franco Cataneo. Mr. Cataneo. Danielle dropped to her knees beside him. His eyes were half open, unfocused. Blood soaked his white shirt. She checked his pulse, steady but weak. Can you hear me? She patted his face, urgent but gentle. He mumbled something incoherent. Italian. She caught the word fuoco. Fire. The flames were spreading faster now, consuming the ancient bookshelves, racing across Persian carpets worth fortunes. Smoke filled the ceiling, dropping lower with each passing second. Her lungs screamed for clean air. Danielle grabbed Franco's arm and tried to pull him up. 200 pounds of unconscious Mafia boss on her shoulder protesting every ounce. He barely moved. You have to help me, she coughed violently. Come on, you have to move. Below, more screaming, breaking glass. Someone shouting orders. Evacuate everyone. Out the front. Move, move, move. Security would rush people away from danger. No one would think to come up here to the private wing. No one would know Franco Cataneo was still inside his burning fortress. Please, Danielle's voice cracked. I can't do this alone. Please get up. Franco's eyes focused slightly. He looked at her without recognition, without understanding, but some primal survival instinct kicked in. He pushed himself upward, and Danielle got her shoulder under his arm, taking as much of his weight as her frame could bear. They stumbled toward the door. Each step felt like miles. Heat blistered her exposed skin. Smoke filled her lungs with poison. Her eyes streamed tears that evaporated in the inferno's breath. But she kept moving, kept dragging Franco forward, one agonizing step at a time. The hallway was worse. Flames now blocked the main staircase, their original escape route consumed. Danielle's mind raced through the fortress's layout, every detail memorized during 647 days of perfect servitude. The servant stairs. They had to reach the servant stairs. This way, she gasped, half dragging, half carrying Franco in the opposite direction. He was more alert now, moving his feet, but still leaning heavily on her smaller frame. Blood from his wound dripped onto her shoulder, warm and sticky. The servant staircase was narrower, darker, filling with smoke but not yet consumed by flames. Her mind flicked through the fortress schematics she'd memorized for her reports. The servant stairs were the only route not covered by internal sensors. Danielle guided Franco down, one step at a time. Her legs trembled with exhaustion. Her shoulder burned where Franco's weight pressed down. But she kept going. Halfway down, Franco stumbled. They both nearly fell. Danielle caught herself against the wall, palm burning against the hot surface. Almost there. She didn't know if she was talking to him or herself. Just a little farther. They burst into the kitchen. The change was startling. Less smoke here. Cooler air flowing through the open back door where staff had evacuated. Danielle guided Franco through, out into the August night. The back lawn was chaos. Staff members huddled in groups, some crying, others staring at the burning fortress in horror. In the distance, sirens wailed. Red and blue lights flickered at the end of the long, cypress-lined driveway. Danielle lowered Franco onto the grass, away from the building. She collapsed beside him, gasping for air, coughing violently. Her throat felt stripped raw. Everything hurt. Danielle? Rosa appeared, face pale with shock. What were you? How did you? He was in the study. Danielle managed between coughs. Someone had to. You went back in. Rosa stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You went back into that fire. Other faces appeared. Security personnel. Finally regrouping. One of them, Matteo, Franco's consigliere, a man with sharp features and sharper instincts, pushed through the crowd. Mr. Cataneo. Matteo dropped to his knees beside Franco, checking his pulse, examining the head wound. Then he looked at Danielle, really looked at her. Something flickered in his expression. Calculation. Suspicion. You brought him out. Danielle nodded, not trusting her voice. Everyone else ran. Matteo's voice was flat, stating facts. But you went back in. I heard the blast. I was close. Danielle coughed again, unable to finish. Franco stirred. His eyes opened more fully, consciousness returning despite the injury. His gaze found Danielle, sharp now, piercing even in his vulnerable state. He studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. Who are you? His voice was rough from smoke, but the question was clear. Danielle Yates. I worked in your house, sir. Why? The single word held universes of questions. Danielle met his eyes and saw the intelligence there, the suspicion. Franco Cataneo hadn't built his empire by trusting people. He would want to know why she'd risked everything to save him, and she didn't have an answer that wouldn't raise more questions. I don't know, she said finally. Honestly, I just couldn't leave you there. Paramedics arrived, shattering the moment. They surrounded Franco, checking vitals, preparing transport. Another team approached Danielle, but she waved them off. I'm fine. Just smoke. Help the others. Matteo stood, already on his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. The fire department had arrived in force, hoses trained on the burning fortress. Police cars blocked the driveway. In the distance, news vans gathered like vultures sensing death. Danielle watched it all from the grass, shivering despite the August heat, her uniform ruined by smoke and ash. Her hands shook. Delayed reaction, adrenaline crash. What had she done? Why had she done it? She'd come to this fortress for answers about her past, about what had happened to her family 8 years ago in Detroit. She'd come to understand the man who'd shaped her life from shadows she didn't yet comprehend. And now, in one impulsive moment of courage or madness, she'd saved his life. As paramedics loaded Franco into an ambulance, he looked back at her one more time. Their eyes met across the chaos, and Danielle saw the question still burning there, sharper than any flame. Why would you save me? She didn't have an answer. Not one she could say out loud. Not yet. The ambulance doors closed. Danielle was left on the lawn, surrounded by the wreckage of the night, knowing everything had changed. She'd stepped out of the shadows, out of her carefully constructed invisibility, and Franco Cataneo would not forget her now. The fortress continued to burn behind her, flames reaching toward the darkening Tuscan sky, consuming secrets and destroying evidence. But some truths, Danielle knew, couldn't be burned away. They remained, buried deep, waiting for the right moment to surface. And that moment, she suspected, was coming faster than she was ready for. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. By dawn, she'd been driven north under cover of emergency evacuation orders. Less than 12 hours separated the explosion from the debrief. The safe house in Siena smelled like old stone and stale coffee. Danielle sat in a straight-backed chair, her hands wrapped around a cup she couldn't bring herself to drink. Her throat still burned from smoke. Every breath tasted like ash. Peter Grant stood by the window, his silver hair catching the morning light. He hadn't looked at her since she'd arrived 3 hours ago. Just paced, thinking, calculating. Walk me through it again. His voice was controlled. Too controlled. I already told you. Tell me again. Danielle's jaw tightened. I was in the corridor when the explosion hit. The study was closest to the blast. I found Cataneo unconscious. I pulled him out. After I ordered you to extract, there were people dying. Your mission was intelligence gathering. Grant finally turned, and Danielle saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. Not heroics. Not unauthorized rescue operations. You had one job, Agent Yates. Gather evidence. Stay invisible. Instead, you saved the one man we needed dead. The words hung between them like an accusation. Like a verdict. Danielle set down her cup carefully. Her hands wanted to shake, but she wouldn't let them. We have 647 days of documentation, enough to dismantle his entire operation. The mission isn't compromised. It's all compromised. You are compromised. Grant leaned forward, and Danielle caught something else beneath his fear. Anger. How long before Cataneo investigates his heroic maid? How long before he finds the gaps in your background, the inconsistencies we couldn't fully cover? You've destroyed 3 years of work because you couldn't follow a simple extraction order. Danielle thought about Franco's eyes in the ambulance. That piercing gaze cutting through smoke and blood and chaos. She'd seen recognition there. Curiosity. The look of a predator identifying something that didn't quite fit the pattern. I made a judgment call. You made a mistake. Grant's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. You're being pulled. Tonight. New identity, new assignment. This operation is over. Sir, the intelligence we gathered will be handled by others. You're done in Italy. Danielle stood slowly. Her body ached from the rescue, from dragging 200 pounds of unconscious Mafia boss through fire and smoke. But her mind ached more, replaying Grant's voice on the radio. That eerie calm when he'd ordered her to leave Franco burning. How did the bomber get past Cataneo's security? She asked the question carefully. His fortress was impenetrable. Military-grade surveillance. Biometric access. How did someone plant explosives without being detected? Grant's face went blank. Not your concern anymore. It should be someone's concern. Agent Yates. His voice dropped to ice. You have 72 hours of medical leave before extraction. I suggest you use it to rest. Don't make me regret giving you that time. The threat was clear. Danielle nodded once and left. Outside, Sienna's morning streets were already filling with tourists. She walked without direction, her mind turning over every detail of the past 24 hours. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. Grant had sounded too calm on that radio. Like he'd expected the explosion. Like he'd wanted her to leave Franco burning. 50 miles away, Franco Cataneo opened his eyes to whiteness. White walls. White sheets. The sterile smell of expensive health care. His head felt like someone had driven a spike through his temple. He tried to sit up, and pain exploded across his ribs. Cracked, probably. He'd felt broken ribs before. This was different. Sharper. Angrier. Easy. Matteo's voice came from his left. His consigliere sat in a chair by the window, looking like he hadn't slept. Blood still stained his shirt from the night before. Doctor says you have a concussion. 3 cracked ribs. Lacerations. You're lucky to be breathing. Franco's memory came back in pieces. The summit. The argument with Vitali from the Corsican family. Then light. Heat. The world ending. And then, a voice. Hands pulling him. Someone coughing. Someone refusing to leave him. The explosion, Franco said. His voice was gravel. 17 dead. 23 injured. The fortress is mostly rubble. Matteo leaned forward. Someone planted C4 inches your study. Remote detonator. Professional work. The families? 3 of the 5 heads survived. Romano and Benedetti didn't make it. Their organizations are already positioning for succession wars. Franco closed his eyes. The summit had been his attempt to modernize, to create structure from chaos. Now chaos was all that remained. Who pulled me out? He already knew somehow. Remembered dark eyes above him, steady hands, someone small shouldering impossible weight. The maid, Danielle Yates. Matteo's tone was carefully neutral. She went back in after everyone else evacuated. Dragged you down the servant stairs while the building burned. Franco opened his eyes. Find her. Already done. She's in Siena, being debriefed by someone. We're not sure who yet. Not sure? She disappeared into a safe house 3 hours ago. No identifying markers on the men who picked her up, but they moved like federal agents. American federal agents. Franco's mind sharpened despite the pain. A maid who moves like a professional. Who risks her life for a man she barely knows. Who gets debriefed by American federals after an assassination attempt. You want me to dig? I want you to find out everything. Where she's from, why she's here, who she really is. Franco shifted, biting back pain. And Matteo? I want to know why she saved me. His consigliere nodded and stood to leave. One more thing, Franco said. The bomber. Any leads? We're working on it. But whoever did this had inside information. They knew exactly where you'd be, exactly when. They knew your security protocols. Franco stared at the white ceiling. Someone inside his organization had betrayed him, and somehow, a mysterious maid who shouldn't have cared whether he lived or died had become the only reason he was still breathing. Nothing about this made sense, which meant he needed to understand it before whoever wanted him dead tried again. Danielle sat in her hotel room in Siena, staring at her laptop screen. She'd been staring for 3 hours, and what she'd found made her stomach turn. Grant's financial records were encrypted, but Danielle had spent 2 years in the FBI's cybercrimes division before transferring to organized crime. She knew how to slip through digital locks without leaving footprints. What she found was impossible. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, deposits matching dates of major FBI operations, but not all deposits matched successful operations. Some matched the dates when rival organizations had been eliminated, not by the FBI, but by other criminal enterprises. She pulled up case files, cross-referencing dates and details. 3 months ago, FBI raid on Albanian trafficking ring. Successful operation, 12 arrests. But 2 days later, the Albanians' primary rival, Franco Cataneo, had quietly absorbed their territory. No violence, no war, just a smooth transition of power. 6 months ago, Corsican weapons smuggling operation dismantled. Major bust, front-page news. But the Corsicans had been Franco's main competition in the arms trade. With them gone, he'd become the dominant supplier across southern Europe. 8 months ago, Serbian loan sharks arrested in coordinated sting operation. Their territory? Now controlled by Cataneo's financial networks. Every successful FBI operation in Italy over the past 2 years had somehow benefited Franco's organization. Danielle's hands shook as she pulled up Grant's communications, encrypted messages to untraceable numbers, coded language that looked like operational updates but read like something else if you knew what to look for. Her handler wasn't building a case against Franco Cataneo. He was building Franco's empire, and Danielle had been the perfect tool. Too honest to suspect, too skilled to fail, feeding Grant intelligence that he used to eliminate Franco's competition while appearing to fight organized crime. She was about to close the laptop when one more file caught her eye. Security footage from a cafe 3 blocks from Franco's fortress, dated the day of the summit. A man placing something behind a dumpster. Moving with purpose. With training. Danielle enhanced the image, ran facial recognition through databases she technically no longer had access to. The match came back in seconds. FBI, deep cover operative, counter-terrorism unit. No reason he should be anywhere near Tuscany. Unless someone with authority had sent him. Danielle's breath caught. She pulled the bomber's movement logs, cross-referenced them with Grant's communications. The bomber had received encrypted messages from Grant's phone network 2 hours before the explosion. Her handler hadn't just known about the bombing. He'd ordered it, and the blast pattern, Danielle realized with growing horror, had been positioned to maximize casualties in the service corridors, where the staff worked, where she had been working. They weren't trying to kill Franco. They were trying to kill her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Danielle stared at it, every instinct screaming danger. But she answered anyway. Agent Yates. A woman's voice. Italian accent but educated elsewhere. Smooth. Dangerous. You're asking dangerous questions. Who is this? Someone who knows why you're alive when you shouldn't be. Someone who can help you understand what your handler really is. A pause. Check his offshore accounts again. Look at the dates more carefully. Then look at the recipients. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. But you don't have many options right now, do you? Peter Grant tried to have you killed last night. He'll try again. The only question is whether you figure out why before he succeeds. The line went dead. Danielle sat in the silence of her hotel room, surrounded by evidence of betrayal. Her handler was dirty. The FBI operation she'd dedicated almost 2 years of her life to was a lie, and someone out there knew everything. Old bureau backdoors still responded to her credentials. A ghost access point the tech division had never fully patched. She pulled up Grant's financial records again, followed the money more carefully this time, tracked the shell corporations back to their origins, and found something that made her blood freeze. The money wasn't just going offshore, it was cycling back into legitimate businesses, real estate, technology firms, international security consulting. Grant wasn't just helping Franco. He was building his own criminal empire using FBI resources as his weapon, and Danielle had been his unwitting assassin, eliminating his competition while he pretended to be a righteous federal agent. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just coordinates and a time. Tomorrow, Florence. A church she recognized from tourist guides. Danielle closed her laptop and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, she'd been a federal agent with a mission. Now she was a target, a pawn in a game she hadn't known she was playing. But she'd also saved Franco Cataneo's life. And somehow, that impossible act of defiance, pulling a mafia boss from fire while her handler ordered her to let him burn, had become the only honest thing in a world of lies. The Chiesa di San Miniato al Monte sat on a hillside overlooking Florence, golden in the afternoon sun. Tourists wandered through, snapping photos of Byzantine mosaics and Renaissance tombs. Danielle sat in a back pew, watching the entrance, her hand resting on the concealed weapon at her hip. The woman who slid into the pew beside her was striking. Late 30s, Mediterranean features, expensive clothes that didn't quite hide the edge underneath. She lit a cigarette despite the setting, taking a long drag before speaking. You came alone. Smart or stupid, I haven't decided which. Who are you? Isabella Rossi. Though I was born Isabella Cataneo. Danielle's breath caught. Franco's sister. You died in a car accident, 25 years ago. I was disappeared. Different thing. Isabella studied Danielle with eyes that held the same predatory intelligence as Franco's. Our father had 2 families. Franco's mother was the wife, Italian, respectable, connected. My mother was the mistress, black, American, inconvenient. Danielle felt the word land, saw the shape of a story she recognized. When the old man died, Isabella continued, Franco's mother made certain I was erased. Orphanage in Naples, foster care, eventually the streets. I survived, Agent Yates, but I never forgot what was taken from me. Why tell me this? Because Peter Grant found me 5 years ago. Back then I was broke, angry, and invisible. Easy prey for a man who knew how to weaponize both pain and ambition. Offered me revenge, resources, a way to destroy Franco and claim what should have been mine. Isabella blew smoke toward the vaulted ceiling. I've been feeding him intelligence, helping him build his shadow network. The bombing at the fortress? My idea. Danielle's hand moved toward her weapon. You killed 17 people. 17 criminals. Let's not romanticize them. Isabella turned to face her fully. But here's what matters. Grant's planning to betray me too. Once Franco's dead, I'm a liability. He's already positioning his people to take over, cutting me out of the power structure. So now I need Franco alive long enough to destroy Grant. Then I'll handle my dear brother myself. You're insane. I'm practical. Isabella pulled a USB drive from her pocket, set it on the pew between them. Everything you need is here. Proof of Grant's operation, recordings, financial transfers, the names of every agent and politician he owns, everything to burn him down. Danielle stared at the drive. What do you want in return? Convince Franco I'm genuinely switching sides. Then help me get close enough to put a bullet in Peter Grant's head. I'm a federal agent. You were a federal agent. Now you're a woman your own agency tried to murder. Isabella stood, dropping the cigarette and crushing it under an expensive heel. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, Grant will find you, and next time there won't be any mafia boss to save. She walked away, leaving Danielle alone with a USB drive full of treason and a choice that felt like falling. Danielle spent 6 hours in an internet cafe, the USB drive connected to a laptop she'd bought with cash. What she found confirmed every suspicion and revealed horrors she hadn't imagined. Grant had been running his shadow operation for 7 years. Started small, feeding information to organized crime figures in exchange for kickbacks. Then evolved, using FBI raids as a weapon to eliminate competition, building shell corporations, laundering money through legitimate businesses. He'd corrupted 12 agents across 3 continents. Had politicians in his pocket, police chiefs, judges, an entire infrastructure of institutional rot that he controlled from his position as a respected FBI handler. And Danielle had been his star operative. Every report she'd filed, every piece of intelligence she'd gathered, had been weaponized to strengthen Franco's organization while appearing to fight it. She was the perfect tool. Too idealistic to suspect, too competent to fail. The recordings on Isabella's drive were damning. Grant discussing operations with criminal contacts, planning the bombing, explaining why Danielle had to die. She'd gotten too close to inconsistencies in his reports. Started asking questions, needed to be eliminated before she exposed everything. Danielle's throat tightened as she listened to her handler discuss her murder with the same clinical detachment he used for mission briefings. She pulled up the bombing forensics. The device had been placed in the service corridor, positioned to maximize casualties among staff. The dining hall damage had been incidental. Secondary, Franco had never been the target. She had been. But why plant the bomb during the summit? Why risk killing 5 Mafia family heads when only 1 FBI agent needed to die? Danielle replayed the recordings. Found the answer in a conversation between Grant and Isabella from 3 weeks ago. The summit gives us perfect cover. An explosion during a Mafia gathering. Tragic but expected. No one investigates too deeply. The families will assume it was a rival hit. The Italian authorities will be happy to see organized crime leaders dead. And in the chaos we eliminate both problems, Franco and his FBI shadow. And if Franco survives? Isabella's voice on the recording. He won't. The blast is positioned to take out his study completely. But even if he does, Danielle will be dead. That's what matters. She's the only thread that could unravel everything. Danielle closed the laptop, her hands shaking with rage and horror. Grant had tried to kill her not because she'd compromised the mission, but because she'd almost discovered his real operation. The bombing wasn't about Franco. It was about silencing the one person who might expose 7 years of institutional corruption. And she'd survived only because she'd disobeyed orders. Run toward the fire instead of away from it. Saved the man her handler needed dead. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Tonight. Address attached. Come alone. M. Matteo. Franco's consigliere. Danielle stared at the message. She could run. Disappear into a new identity. Hope Grant never found her. Or she could walk into another trap. Trust people who had every reason to kill her. She thought about Franco's eyes in the ambulance. That question burning there. Why would you save me? Because leaving people to die wasn't something Danielle Yates could do. Even when those people were supposed to be monsters. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the address. The villa was outside Florence. Baroque architecture hidden behind high walls and serious security. Matteo met her at the gate, his expression unreadable as he scanned her for weapons. You're armed. So are your men. Fair point. He gestured for her to follow. He's been asking about you. Every hour since he woke up. Wants to know who you really are. What did you tell him? That you're too clean. No criminal record. No debts. No connections to rival families. You're exactly what you appear to be. A woman who needed a job and happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. Matteo paused outside a door. Or you're the best deep cover operative I've ever seen. Danielle's heart hammered. Which do you think? I think you saved his life when you could have walked away. That means something. He opened the door. But Franco will want to know why, and he's very good at finding truth. The study was smaller than the one that had burned, less opulent. But the man sitting behind the desk commanded the same presence. Even bandaged, even weakened, Franco Cataneo radiated controlled power. He looked up as Danielle entered, and something flickered in his dark eyes. Recognition, curiosity, assessment. Danielle Yates. He said her name like tasting wine. Sit. It wasn't a request. Danielle took the chair across from him, acutely aware of Matteo standing by the door, of the security cameras she'd spotted on the way in, of how thoroughly trapped she was. Franco studied her in silence. Long enough that Danielle felt stripped bare, every secret exposed under his gaze. The doctors tell me I should be dead, he finally said. The blast should have done more damage. But someone pulled me out before the fire could finish what the explosion started. He leaned forward slightly. That was you. Yes. Why? Danielle had practiced this answer, prepared calm explanations about instinct and proximity and basic human decency. But sitting here now, under the weight of his attention, the rehearsed words felt hollow. I don't know, she said honestly. I heard the explosion. I was right there. Everyone was running, and I just thought, someone needs to check. Someone needs to make sure no one's left behind. Heroic. The word sounded like an accusation. Do you know what I am, Danielle? The kind of man I am? I've worked in your house for 6 months. I have some idea. Then you know people don't help men like me out of goodness. They help because they want something. Or because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. He paused. Which is it? Neither, I didn't think. I just acted. Stupid or brave? Maybe both. Franco's lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. Matteo ran a full background check. You're from Detroit originally. Father deceased when you were 15. Mother passed 2 years ago. No siblings. Moved to Italy 8 months ago. Worked 2 restaurant jobs before applying to my household staff. He paused. Why Italy? Dangerous territory. I wanted a fresh start. From what? Loss. The kind everyone runs from eventually. Franco nodded slowly, but Danielle could see him cataloging every word, every hesitation, filing them away for later analysis. The police have questions about the explosion, he continued. They think it was intentional, an assassination attempt. They'll want to talk to you again. I told them everything I know. And for me liber vox to the prisonate, which is nothing. You were just a maid in the wrong place at the right time. Franco's expression hardened. That's going to be your story. You saw nothing suspicious before the blast, heard nothing unusual. You delivered coffee and reacted on instinct when the explosion happened. Understand? You want me to lie to the police? I want you to survive this. His voice dropped. The people who set that explosion, Danielle, they're still out there. And now you're connected to me. You saved my life, which means you've painted a target on your back. The words hit Danielle like ice water. She'd been so focused on Grant's betrayal that she hadn't considered the other threats. The families who might see her as leverage. The rivals who might want to eliminate anyone Franco cared about. You think they'll come after me? I know they will. It's already started. Franco pulled out his phone, showed her photographs. Danielle leaving her hotel. Danielle at the internet cafe. Danielle entering the church where she'd met Isabella. Someone's tracking you. Professional surveillance. My people intercepted 2 attempts to find your home address. Someone tried to bribe former staff for information about you. Danielle's chest tightened. What do I do? You accept my protection. Move into a secure location. Let my people watch over you until we find whoever did this and handle them. Handle them. This isn't your world, and I won't drag you deeper than necessary. But the reality is simple. You're in danger because of what you did for me. I don't forget debts, Danielle. I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. No, Franco agreed. But I'm responsible for you now, whether you like it or not. Danielle wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself. But she'd seen enough in 6 months to know how his world operated. Threats weren't empty. Danger was real. And she had nowhere else to go. Grant would find her eventually. Isabella would demand her answer. And the families would see her as either leverage or liability. How long? She asked. Until it's safe. Could be weeks. Could be longer. And what do you expect in return? Franco's eyes held hers. Honest answers when I ask questions, that's all. It was a trap. Danielle knew she had secrets that couldn't survive interrogation. But the alternative was worse. She hated that she needed him. Hated that the only person offering safety was the man she'd been trained to destroy. But the Bureau had already marked her expendable. Okay, I'll accept your protection. Good. Franco reached for his phone. Matteo will take you to a secure apartment. It's comfortable, private, well guarded. You'll have everything you need. But Danielle? He looked up and his gaze was steel. Don't make me regret this. Don't make me wonder if saving you was my mistake. Danielle stood, her legs unsteady. She'd crossed a line tonight, accepted protection from the man she'd been sent to destroy. Become complicit in his world. But she was alive. And sometimes, survival was all that mattered. 3 days in Franco's secure apartment felt like 3 years. Danielle paced the space. Luxury furnishings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Florence's terracotta rooftops, art that probably cost more than her annual salary. But it was still a cage, gilded and comfortable, but a cage nonetheless. 2 guards outside, cameras in every corner except the bedroom and bathroom. Her phone had been replaced with an encrypted burner. Her laptop confiscated. She was protected, yes, but also imprisoned. On the 4th morning, Matteo appeared at the door. Get dressed. He wants to see you. Franco? Unless you know another he who controls your life right now. Danielle bit back a retort. Changed from loungewear into jeans and a fitted black top. When she emerged, Matteo's eyes flickered over her with assessment, but his expression remained neutral. They drove through Florence in silence, taking back streets, changing vehicles twice. Professional counter-surveillance. Danielle catalogued every turn, every street sign, habit from her training. Even captive, even protected, she needed to know her escape routes. The villa from before. But this time, Matteo led her to a different room. Smaller, more intimate. Library shelves lined the walls. A fire burned in the fireplace despite the August heat. And Franco sat in a leather chair, looking stronger than he had days ago. The bandage on his head was smaller. He moved without the careful stiffness of broken ribs. Leave us, he told Matteo. The consigliere hesitated. Franco. I said leave us. Matteo withdrew, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a trap snapping shut. Franco gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. Danielle sat, acutely aware of the space between them. The fire's heat on her skin. The way his eyes tracked her every movement. 3 days in the apartment had blurred into one long interrogation by silence. She'd replayed every choice, every lie. By the time Matteo returned, she almost wanted answers from Franco more than freedom. I've spent the last 3 days learning about you, Franco began. Every detail of your background. Your childhood in Detroit. Your father's death when you were 15. Shot during a robbery. Your mother raising you alone. Working 2 jobs. You graduated high school with honors. Went to community college. Worked your way through school. Danielle's throat tightened. They'd built that cover carefully. Fed it with truth where possible. Lies only where necessary. Then your mother got sick. Cancer. You worked 3 jobs to pay for treatment, but she died anyway. 2 years ago. Franco paused. After that, you seemed to drift. Restaurant work. Odd jobs. Then 8 months ago, you came to Italy. Applied to my household staff. Started over. Is there a question in all this? Several. Franco leaned forward, and the firelight cast shadows across his face. Made him look dangerous. Beautiful. Your background is perfect. Too perfect. Like someone designed it specifically to avoid suspicion. No criminal record, no debts, no connections to anyone interesting. You're invisible, Danielle. And in my experience, people who are that invisible are either running from something or hunting it. Danielle forced herself to meet his eyes. Maybe I'm just ordinary. Ordinary people don't run into burning buildings to save men they barely know. Ordinary people do extraordinary things when there's no time to think. Do they? Franco's gaze intensified. Or do trained people do extraordinary things because training overrides instinct? The words hung between them, sharp and dangerous. What are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing, I'm observing. Franco stood, moved to the fireplace, his back to her, but Danielle sensed coiled readiness in his posture. I've been in this business a long time, Danielle. I've seen loyalty, seen betrayal, seen every variation of deception humans can create. And I've learned to recognize when something doesn't fit the pattern. He turned, and his expression was unreadable. You don't fit the pattern. Danielle's pulse hammered. This was it. The moment he revealed he knew everything. That he'd been playing her since she woke him from the flames. Special Agent Danielle Yates. Franco said her real name quietly. FBI Organized Crime Unit. 3 years undercover in Chicago before this assignment. Decorated service in Army Intelligence before that. Northwestern University. Degree in Criminology. Your handler's name is Peter Grant. The air left Danielle's lungs. How long have you known? 6 months. Since February. That was months before the summit. Proof he'd been watching her far longer than she'd realized, letting her run her mission like a rat in a maze. Franco crossed to the sidebar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Your background had inconsistencies, small ones, the kind most people wouldn't notice. But a man in my position doesn't ignore inconsistencies. He handed her a glass. Danielle took it with shaking hands. Then why didn't you? Kill you? Expose you? Franco settled back into his chair. Because I wanted to understand what game was being played, and I discovered something interesting. He pulled out a folder, slid it across to her. Every FBI bust in Italy over the past 18 months. Every successful operation. Look at the dates. Then look at what happened after. Danielle opened the folder with dread. Saw what she'd already discovered in Grant's files. Every raid strengthening Franco's position. Every bust eliminating his competition. Your intelligence was good, Franco continued. Excellent, actually. But it was only hitting my rivals. Every shipment your people intercepted, every organization they dismantled, it benefited me. Your handler was feeding you targets that made my empire stronger while appearing to fight organized crime. Danielle's throat burned. I didn't know. I believe you. You're too honest to have participated knowingly. Franco sipped his whiskey. But your handler, Peter Grant, he's been using the FBI as his personal elimination service. Removing my competition, helping me consolidate power, all while pretending to be a righteous federal agent. Why? Danielle's voice was barely a whisper. Because he's building his own empire, using both sides. The FBI gives him legitimacy and resources. I give him money and protection. Together we're untouchable. Franco's eyes held hers. Or we were, until you decided to save my life instead of following your extraction order. The pieces fell into place. The explosion was meant for both of us. You'd outlived your usefulness once the summit was arranged. Grant needed you gone before you figured out what he was doing, and he needed me dead before I realized he was positioning himself to absorb my organization. Franco set down his glass. A bombing during a Mafia gathering. Tragic, but expected. No one would investigate too deeply. 2 problems solved with 1 explosion. Danielle's hands shook. But I saved you, despite your orders. Why? I told you. You told me instinct, that you couldn't leave anyone to burn. Franco leaned forward. But you knew what I was. You'd spent 6 months gathering evidence against me. You knew I was a criminal, a killer. Everything you'd sworn to stop when you became an agent. Yet you risked your life to save mine. So I'll ask again. Why? Danielle stared into her whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch firelight. How could she explain what she didn't fully understand herself? That in 6 months of watching Franco, she'd seen complexity beneath the violence. Intelligence. Strategy. A man trying to build something sustainable from generations of blood. Because leaving anyone to die is unthinkable, she said finally. Even my enemies. Even someone I was supposed to destroy. I couldn't just walk away and let you burn. Franco studied her for a long moment. Your handler will try again. You're a loose end, and he's too exposed now. You can't go back to the FBI. Who would believe you? A disgraced agent accusing her decorated handler of corruption? You'd be buried in bureaucracy and internal investigations while Grant eliminated you. What are you offering? An alliance. You need proof that your agency is corrupt, evidence that can't be ignored. I need to eliminate Grant before he finishes positioning himself to control my organization. We help each other. I'm a federal agent. Who your agency just tried to murder. Franco's voice was soft but steel underneath. The enemy of my enemy, Agent Yates. Or would you prefer to face this alone? Danielle thought about Grant's voice on the recording, discussing her death like a logistics problem. Thought about Isabella's USB drive hidden in her apartment. Thought about the families hunting her, the FBI hunting her, walls closing in from every direction. If I do this, she said slowly, if I help you destroy Grant, what happens after? After, you're free. I have no use for unwilling allies. You can take your evidence to whoever will listen, expose the corruption, maybe salvage your career, maybe start over somewhere else. But you'll be alive, Danielle. That's more than you'll be if you walk away now. Danielle met his eyes. Saw calculation there, yes. But also something else. Recognition. Like they were two pieces of a puzzle that shouldn't fit but somehow did. She thought about her oath as an FBI agent. About justice and law and everything she'd believed in when she'd first pinned on a badge. Then she thought about Grant ordering her death. About 17 people dying in an explosion meant to cover institutional corruption. About how the system she'd trusted had rotted from the inside. Sometimes justice didn't live in badges or agencies. Sometimes it lived in choices. Danielle extended her hand. Partners. But we do this my way. No shortcuts. No unnecessary violence. We get proof. We expose Grant. We end this cleanly. Franco's lips curved. He took her hand, and his grip was warm, firm, dangerous. No shortcuts, he agreed. Though I suspect you and I have different definitions of clean. Then we'll figure it out as we go. We will. Franco held her hand a moment longer than necessary. Welcome to the other side of the line, Agent Yates. Danielle felt that line dissolving beneath her feet. The line between agent and criminal, between duty and survival, between the woman she'd been trained to be and the woman who'd run into fire without thinking. She released Franco's hand, but the warmth lingered. So what's our first move? She asked. Franco smiled. We find my sister. The church where Danielle had met Isabella 3 days ago felt different in the evening light. Shadows stretched across the floor like accusations. Tourists had thinned to a handful, their voices hushed beneath vaulted ceilings that had witnessed centuries of prayer and sin. Danielle sat in the same pew, Franco beside her. Close enough that she felt his heat, his presence. Close enough that anyone watching would see them as lovers seeking privacy, not enemies forming an alliance. She'll be cautious, Franco said quietly. Isabella survived 25 years by being invisible. Meeting us together is a risk. She contacted me. She wants something. Everyone wants something. Franco's eyes scanned the church, cataloging exits and sightlines. Professional paranoia. The question is what she's willing to trade for it. Movement near the confessionals. Isabella emerged from shadow like she belonged to it, wearing black that made her nearly invisible except for the flash of silver at her throat. A necklace. Danielle noticed Franco's eyes fix on it, recognition flickering across his features. That was our mother's, he said as Isabella slid into the pew. She wore it every day until she died. I took it from her coffin. Isabella's voice was soft, dangerous. Figured she owed me something. The family resemblance was striking now that Danielle knew to look for it. The same sharp cheekbones, the same predatory grace. But where Franco carried power like armor, Isabella wore survival like a blade pressed against her own throat. You wanted to meet, Franco said. We're here. Together. Interesting. Isabella studied Danielle. Did he tell you I tried to kill him? She told me you planted the bomb that killed 17 people, Danielle replied evenly, including people who had nothing to do with whatever vendetta you're nursing. Casualties of war. They were human beings. They were criminals. Let's not romanticize them just because they burned instead of shooting each other like professionals. Isabella turned to Franco. Did you tell her about me? About what your mother did? I told her you were erased, that I didn't know you existed until 3 days ago. Convenient ignorance. Franco's jaw tightened. If I'd known, you'd have done nothing. Because I was the bastard daughter of a black American mistress. and you were the heir to a criminal empire. Our father made his choice when he let your mother disappear me. You just inherited the consequences." Danielle watched the pain flicker across both their faces. Two people shaped by abandonment, by family cruelty, by the violence of being unwanted. She understood that pain, had lived it herself in different forms. "Why are we here, Isabella?" she asked. "You said you'd help us expose Grant, but you also helped him try to kill us both. Why should we trust anything you say?" "Because Grant's going to betray me too." Isabella pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between her fingers. "I've spent 5 years helping him build his shadow network, feeding him intelligence on Franco's operations, helping him position himself as the invisible hand controlling organized crime across Europe. And now that he's close to succeeding, he's cutting me out." "How do you know?" Franco asked. "Because I'm not stupid. I've been watching the money flows, the communications. Grant's been meeting with your captains behind my back, offering them better deals if they shift their loyalty once you're eliminated. He's building the infrastructure to absorb your empire without me." Isabella finally looked at her half-brother, and something almost human flickered in her eyes. "He used me to get close to you, promised me revenge, resources, everything I'd been denied, but he never intended to honor that promise. To him, I'm just another tool, another expendable asset. So, now you want us to eliminate Grant before he eliminates you," Danielle said. "And then what? You still want Franco dead. You still want what you think he stole from you." "Maybe." Isabella's smile was sharp. "Or maybe I've realized that revenge is expensive, that burning down everything our father built won't change the past, won't make our mother come back, won't make me feel less erased." She paused. "Grant needs to die because he's a cancer, because he's turned the FBI into a weapon and organized crime into a business plan, because he represents everything corrupt about power. People who use systems and institutions to serve themselves while pretending to serve justice." Danielle felt the words land. That was exactly what Grant had done. Corrupted everything the badge was supposed to mean. "What do you want in return for helping us?" Franco asked. "Because I know you, sister. I know our blood. We don't help without expecting something." Isabella pulled the USB drive from her pocket, the same one she'd given Danielle before, but Danielle suspected this version contained more, complete files, the full architecture of Grant's corruption. "I want acknowledgement. I want my name. Isabella Cataneo, not Rossi. I want the world to know I existed, that our father had 2 children, not just one." She looked at Franco. "And I want you to admit that what happened to me was wrong, that you benefit from violence you didn't commit, but also didn't stop." Franco was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight Danielle hadn't heard before. Vulnerability beneath the armor. "You're right. What happened to you was wrong. Our father was a coward who abandoned you. My mother was cruel to erase you, and I benefited from that cruelty by never questioning it, never looking for the gaps in our family story." He met Isabella's eyes. "I can't give you back what was stolen, but I can acknowledge the theft, and I can make sure everyone knows you're a Cataneo." Something shifted in Isabella's expression. Not forgiveness. That would take more than words. But recognition. The beginning of something that might eventually become reconciliation. "The USB has everything," she said, handing it to Danielle. "Grant's financial records, recordings of him ordering operations, names of every corrupt agent and politician in his network, communications proving he planned the bombing. It's enough to destroy him completely." "How do we get to him?" Danielle asked. "Grant's careful. He'll have security, counter-surveillance, escape protocols. He's hosting a meeting next week. His shadow network gathering on a yacht off the Amalfi Coast. Every corrupt official, every criminal liaison, everyone he controls will be there. It's his coronation. The moment he reveals himself as the real power behind the throne." Isabella's smile was razor-sharp, "and it's the perfect opportunity to expose him to everyone at once." Franco leaned back, thinking. "Getting onto that yacht will be nearly impossible. Grant's security will be military grade." "I can get you in," Isabella said. "I'm supposed to be there, his guest of honor, though I suspect he's planning to eliminate me shortly after. You come as my +1, Franco. Danielle goes as my assistant. We infiltrate, gather more evidence if needed, and then we burn him down in front of everyone he's corrupted. Danielle's mind raced through the logistics. That's insane. Grant will recognize me immediately. He'll recognize you eventually, no matter where you hide. Better to control the timing. Better to have him surrounded by witnesses when we expose what he is. Isabella stood. You have 3 days to prepare. I'll send details tomorrow. But understand this. Once we start this, there's no pulling back. We either destroy Grant completely, or we all die trying. She walked away, footsteps echoing through the church. Danielle and Franco sat in silence, the weight of what they'd agreed to settling over them like ash. She's going to betray us, Franco said quietly. You know that, right? At some point she'll try to eliminate me and take everything. Probably, Danielle agreed. But right now we need her, and she needs us. That makes us allies. For now. You're learning to think like one of us. Or you're learning to think like one of me. Franco smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Made him look younger, less dangerous. Maybe we're both learning to think like something new, something neither of us has been before. Danielle felt heat rise in her chest. Dangerous heat, the kind that had nothing to do with fire and everything to do with the man beside her. The way he looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. The way his presence made her feel simultaneously threatened and safe. We should go, she said, standing quickly. We have 3 days to plan an impossible infiltration. We should probably start now. Franco rose, and somehow they were standing too close. Danielle could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Could see the faint scar on his jaw from the explosion. Could feel her pulse hammering in places that had nothing to do with danger. Danielle. Her name and his voice sounded different, less like an assessment and more like a question. Don't, she said softly. Whatever you're thinking, don't. I'm thinking that you saved my life. That you're risking everything to do something that won't benefit you at all. That you're the first honest person I've met in 10 years, and I have no idea what to do with that. You do nothing with it. We destroy Grant. We expose the corruption. Then we go our separate ways. Do we? Danielle forced herself to step back, to break the magnetic pull between them. We have to. I'm still a federal agent, Franco. You're still a criminal. There's no world where this. She gestured between them. Makes sense. Then maybe we need to build a different world. The words hung between them, impossible and tempting. Danielle turned and walked toward the exit, putting distance between herself and the gravity of Franco Cataneo. Behind her, she heard him follow, felt his presence like heat against her back. 3 days until the yacht. 3 days to prepare for an operation that would probably get them all killed. 3 days to figure out how to destroy Peter Grant without destroying herself in the process. Outside, the Florentine night was warm and heavy. Stars struggled to pierce the light pollution. Danielle breathed deep, trying to clear her head, trying to remember who she was beneath all the layers of deception and danger. Special Agent Danielle Yates, FBI. That was supposed to mean something. But right now, standing in the darkness with a Mafia boss who looked at her like she was salvation and damnation in equal measure, Danielle wasn't sure what anything meant anymore, except that in 3 days, everything would either end or begin, and she had no idea which terrified her more. Chapter 6:9. The Black Maid dragged the Italian Mafia boss out of the fire. The villa's war room felt like a vault. Stone walls thick enough to muffle screams, windows shuttered against surveillance, a table covered with maps and photographs and the architectural plans for a yacht that cost more than most people earned in lifetimes. Danielle stood at one end, Franco at the other. Isabella between them like a blade pressed between enemies who'd agreed not to cut each other. Yet, 2 days until the Amalfi Coast. 2 days to plan an infiltration that required trusting people who tried to kill each other a week ago. Grant's security will have 3 layers. Isabella spread surveillance photos across the table. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, pointing out guard positions, camera angles, exit routes, perimeter patrol boats, deck security with facial recognition software, and his inner circle. Agents he's personally corrupted, men who'll kill without hesitation because he owns their secrets. Danielle studied the yacht's layout, her training kicking in despite everything. How do we bypass facial recognition? We don't. Franco's voice was quiet, controlled. He'd been watching Danielle more than the plans, and she felt his attention like heat against her skin. We use it. You're supposed to be dead, which means seeing you alive will rattle Grant. Make him reactive instead of strategic. Rattling him could also make him paranoid enough to kill everyone on that yacht rather than risk exposure. Then we move fast. Hit him before he has time to think. Franco leaned over the table and suddenly the space between them contracted. Danielle could smell his cologne, see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. You'll wear a wire. Record everything. Isabella gets us on board as her guests. We let Grant start his coronation speech. Let him incriminate himself in front of witnesses. Then we strike. And if Isabella's right? Danielle forced herself to focus on the mission, not on how Franco's presence made her pulse quicken. If Grant's planning to eliminate her during this meeting, then we'll have to be faster than his execution order. Isabella's smile was sharp. But that's where you come in, Agent Yates. You know how Grant thinks. You know his operational patterns. Where will he position his kill team? Danielle closed her eyes, visualizing. Grant had trained her, after all. She knew his methods. He'll wait until after the speech. Maximum psychological impact. Show his power. Reveal his network. Then eliminate the threat in front of everyone as a demonstration. The kill team will be positioned near the escape routes, blocking exits, making sure no one can run when the shooting starts. Exits we need to keep open. Franco's fingers traced routes on the map, and Danielle noticed the scars on his knuckles. Violence written in old wounds. Mateo will position our people here, here, and here. Speedboats in the water. Extraction ready if this goes wrong. When this goes wrong, Isabella corrected. Let's not pretend this is anything but suicide with good planning. The three of them stood in silence, staring at maps that represented either salvation or death. Danielle thought about her oath as an agent, about justice and law and everything she'd believed in before fire and betrayal had burned those beliefs to ash. We do this. There's no going back, she said quietly. Any of us. Grant dies or we die. Those are the only options. I've been living with no going back for 25 years. Isabella's voice carried weight Danielle was beginning to understand. The weight of abandonment, of survival at any cost. Going back isn't an option when there's nowhere to return to. Franco's eyes met Danielle's across the table. Are you having second thoughts? I'm having all the thoughts. Second, third, thousandth. Danielle's hands pressed against the table, steadying herself. But no, I'm not backing out. Grant needs to be stopped. If this is how we stop him, then we do it. Even if it means crossing every line you swore not to cross. The lines got crossed when my handler tried to have me murdered. Now I'm just choosing which side I stand on when the smoke clears. Something shifted in Franco's expression. Recognition. Respect. Maybe something more dangerous than either. Isabella gathered the maps, rolling them with efficient movements. I'll confirm our position on the guest list. You two should rest. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Once we're on that yacht, there's no communication with the outside world. No backup. Just us against everyone Grant owns. She left, and suddenly the room felt smaller, more intimate. Danielle was acutely aware that she and Franco were alone in a space designed for secrets. You should sleep, Franco said, but he didn't move toward the door. I'm not tired. You're terrified. I can see it. Danielle's jaw tightened. If I wasn't terrified, I'd be an idiot. We're about to walk into a trap with no guarantee we'll walk out. Then why do it? Franco crossed the space between them in 3 strides, and suddenly he was close enough that Danielle had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You could run. Disappear. You're good enough to vanish and never be found. Why risk everything for a badge that means nothing anymore? It's not about the badge. Danielle's voice came out rougher than she intended. It's about what the badge was supposed to represent. Justice. Accountability. The idea that no one is above consequence. She paused. Grant corrupted that, made it meaningless. But if I run, if I let him win, then he was right. The badge never meant anything. I never meant anything. Franco's hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light, testing. You mean something. Danielle's breath caught. This close, she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Could feel the heat radiating from his body. Could taste the danger of wanting someone she shouldn't want. Franco, you risked your life to save me. His thumb traced her jawline, and Danielle felt the touch everywhere. You ran into fire when everyone else ran away. Don't tell me that doesn't mean something. It means I was stupid, or noble, or too damaged to let anyone die even when they deserve it. Danielle's hands came up to his chest, intending to push him away. Instead, they rested there, feeling his heartbeat beneath expensive cotton. It doesn't mean this makes sense. Nothing about us makes sense. Franco's other hand settled at her waist, anchoring her. You're a federal agent. I'm a criminal. You were sent to destroy me. I should have killed you the moment I discovered your identity. But here we are, about to risk everything together. And all I can think about is how you looked pulling me from those flames, covered in ash, coughing smoke, refusing to leave me, even when your handler ordered you to let me burn. Danielle's pulse hammered in her throat. Don't confuse gratitude with something else. Is that what this is? Gratitude? Franco leaned closer, his breath warm against her temple. Because it feels like something far more complicated. It is complicated. Impossibly complicated. But Danielle didn't pull away. Couldn't pull away. We're about to walk into a situation where we'll probably die. This isn't the time. This is exactly the time. When else do we have? Tomorrow we might be dead. Next week one of us might betray the other. This moment, right now, this is all we're guaranteed. Danielle looked up at him and saw her own conflict reflected in his eyes. Two people who shouldn't fit but somehow did. Two people shaped by violence and betrayal, learning to recognize something softer in each other. One night, she whispered. That's all this can be. One night before everything burns. Franco's smile was gentle. Sad. I'll take one night with you over a lifetime with anyone else. He kissed her then, and Danielle stopped thinking about badges and missions and all the reasons this was wrong. She let herself fall into the kiss, into the heat and need and dangerous tenderness of being held by someone who understood exactly what it cost to survive in their world. They moved from the war room to Franco's quarters without breaking apart, hands learning the landscape of each other's bodies with reverent urgency. Danielle's fingers found the scars on Franco's back. Old wounds, old battles. His hands traced the lean muscle of her arms, the strength that had dragged him from fire. You're beautiful, he murmured against her throat. Strong and fierce and more honest than anyone I've ever known. Danielle pulled back enough to see his face. I lied to you for 6 months. You were honest about who you are beneath the lies. That's what matters. Franco's hands framed her face, holding her like something precious. I see you, Danielle Yates. All of you, the agent and the woman who can't let anyone burn. I see you. Danielle felt something break open in her chest. Some wall she'd built to survive undercover work, to maintain distance from targets and marks and people she was supposed to betray. Franco had gotten past those walls by refusing to be anyone but exactly who he was. A criminal trying to be better. A man shaped by violence learning to choose mercy. They fell into bed together, and Danielle let herself be present. Let herself feel every touch, every whispered word, every moment of connection that probably wouldn't survive tomorrow's dawn. She traced the tattoos on Franco's chest, symbols of family and loyalty, and old blood oaths. He learned the texture of her skin, the places that made her gasp, the ways she needed to be held. It wasn't gentle. They were too desperate for gentle. But it was real. Raw. Two people clinging to each other in the darkness before the storm. After, they lay tangled together, Danielle's head on Franco's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. The villa was quiet around them. Outside, the Tuscan night pressed against windows like a held breath. Tomorrow changes everything, Danielle said softly. Tomorrow already changed the moment you decided to save me. Franco's fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. Everything that comes after is just consequences. What if we don't make it out? Then we go down fighting, together. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But if we do make it out, if we somehow survive this, I want you to know that tonight wasn't just about survival or fear or one last moment before the end. Danielle lifted her head to meet his eyes. What was it about? Hope. The idea that maybe two people who've burned everything they touch can build something instead of destroying it. Franco's smile was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. The idea that you and I might have a future beyond tomorrow. Danielle wanted to believe him. wanted to imagine a world where an FBI agent and a mafia boss could somehow build something real from the ashes of their respective betrayals. But she'd seen too much. Lost too much. Hope felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Still, she kissed him. Slow and deep and full of all the things she couldn't say out loud. They fell asleep wrapped around each other. And for a few hours, Danielle let herself pretend tomorrow wouldn't come. That they could stay suspended in this moment. Safe, together, untouched by the violence waiting beyond these walls. But dawn arrived anyway, cold and absolute. Danielle woke to find Franco already dressed, standing by the window, watching the sun rise over Tuscany. He looked like a man preparing for war. Which, she supposed, he was. "It's time," he said, without turning. Danielle dressed in silence. Combat boots, dark jeans, a fitted jacket that concealed her weapon and the wire she'd wear to record Grant's confession. She pulled her hair back in a tight bun, studying herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was no longer the maid who'd cleaned Franco's floors. Wasn't quite the FBI agent who'd arrived in Tuscany with clear moral lines. She was something new. Something forged in fire and betrayal and impossible choices. Franco appeared behind her in the mirror. "Ready?" Danielle turned to face him. "No. But we're doing this anyway." He nodded. Understood. They left the room together, heading for whatever waited on the Amalfi coast. Matteo and Isabella waited by the cars. The consigliere looked grim. Isabella looked eager. They all looked like people who'd accepted they might not survive the day. "The yacht leaves port in 3 hours," Isabella said. "We need to be on board before Grant's inner circle arrives. Once the meeting starts, the security lockdown will be absolute." They drove toward the coast in silence. Danielle watched the Tuscan landscape give way to coastal roads, watched the Mediterranean appear on the horizon like a promise and a threat. Franco's hand found hers in the back seat. Squeezed once. Danielle squeezed back. They were heading toward the heart of Grant's empire. Toward violence and revelation, and the moment where everything they'd built would either stand or crumble. But they were going together. And somehow, that made all the difference. The yacht was obscene in its luxury. White and gold, cutting through azure waters like a blade through silk. 3 decks of wealth and corruption, floating 50 miles offshore where no laws applied except the ones Peter Grant chose to enforce. Danielle stood on the boarding deck in a dove-gray dress Isabella had provided, her skin prickling beneath the wire taped to her ribs. The security team had scanned her twice, ran facial recognition that came back with her FBI photo and a status marker that read, "Deceased, field casualty." Grant's head of security, a man named Reeves she recognized from Quantico, studied the screen with confusion. Then he looked at her, really looked, and Danielle saw recognition dawn in his eyes. "Sir," Reeves spoke into his comms, "we have a problem." Danielle's hand moved toward her concealed weapon, but Franco's touch on her lower back stopped her. Light. Steadying. "Let them see me," Danielle said quietly. "Let Grant know I'm alive. That's part of the plan." Isabella stepped forward, all languid confidence. "Is there a problem?" "We're expected guests. One of your party is supposed to be dead." "Death," Isabella said with a smile sharp as glass, "is often exaggerated. Clear us through or explain to your boss why you're delaying his honored guests." Reeves hesitated, spoke into his comms again, then nodded tersely. "You're cleared, but Mr. Grant will want to speak with you immediately." They boarded the yacht. Danielle felt the deck shift beneath her feet, felt the infinite water surrounding them. No escape routes out here, no backup. Just them against everyone Grant owned. The main salon was already filling with people. Danielle recognized faces from intelligence briefings. Corrupt senators, police chiefs on cartel payrolls, European officials who'd sold their integrity decades ago. The architecture of institutional rot, all gathered in one floating palace. And there, holding court near the bar, was Peter Grant. He looked exactly as Danielle remembered. Silver-haired, distinguished, the kind of man who inspired trust and respect, until you looked closer and saw the cold calculation in his eyes, the absolute confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. His gaze found Danielle across the salon, and she watched shock ripple across his face. Shock, then fear, then fury, all in the span of seconds before his professional mask slammed back into place. Agent Yates. His voice carried across the room, silencing conversations. I was told you died in the Tuscany explosion. Clearly reports of your death were premature. Danielle moved toward him, aware of every eye in the room tracking her movement. Did you want them to be accurate, sir? When you ordered that bomb planted, were you hoping I'd burn? The room went deadly quiet. Grant's smile never wavered. I think the stress of your assignment has affected your judgment. You're making wild accusations. I'm making accurate observations based on forensic evidence, financial records, and recordings of you planning my assassination. Danielle's voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Should I play them for everyone here? Let your colleagues hear exactly what kind of man they're partnering with. Grant's eyes flickered to his security team. Danielle saw the calculation. The moment he decided she was a threat that needed eliminating immediately. Reeves, detain Agent Yates. She's clearly experiencing a mental health crisis. I'm experiencing clarity, Danielle cut him off. For the first time in 2 years, I see exactly what you are. What you've built. This entire network of corruption using the FBI as your personal elimination service while pretending to fight organized crime. Franco moved to Danielle's side, his presence solid and dangerous. Isabella flanked her other side, united front. Grant's gaze shifted to Franco, and something like triumph flickered in his expression. Franco Cataneo, I'm surprised to see you alive as well. The explosion was meant to be more conclusive. You should hire better bombers, Franco said quietly. The one you sent was sloppy, left evidence. Evidence that will never see daylight. Grant gestured to his security team. Because you're 50 miles offshore on my yacht, surrounded by my people, with nowhere to run. You've walked into a tomb, Agent Yates. All 3 of you. The security team moved forward, weapons drawn. Danielle's hand went to her gun, but she was outnumbered 10-1. This was it. The moment where their plan collapsed into violence and chaos. Then Franco smiled. You talk too much, Grant. Gunfire exploded from the lower deck. Mateo's team bursting from their hidden positions. The salon erupted into chaos. People screaming, diving for cover, security teams spinning to engage multiple threats. Danielle drew her weapon and moved. Training taking over. She put 2 rounds center mass into Reeves, dropped behind the bar as return fire chewed through expensive wood. Her ears rang with violence. Her wire was still recording, still capturing everything Grant had said, every incriminating word. Franco fought with brutal efficiency, taking down security personnel with precise shots. Isabella moved like she'd been born to violence, all grace and lethality. But Grant was already moving toward the bridge, toward escape. Danielle chased him through the chaos, upstairs slick with blood, through corridors where bodies lay crumpled. Grant was fast for a man in his 50s, desperation lending speed. She caught him at the bridge entrance. Slammed him against the bulkhead hard enough to rattle teeth. You killed 17 people to cover your corruption, Danielle gasped. You tried to murder me, your own agent, because I was getting close to the truth. You turned the FBI into a weapon for personal profit. Grant laughed, blood on his teeth. And who's going to stop me? You? A disgraced agent working with the Mafia? No one will believe you. My reputation is bulletproof. Not after they hear the recordings. Not after they see the financial evidence. Not after Isabella testifies about every operation you've run. Danielle pressed her forearm against his throat. You're finished, Grant. I'm a federal agent. You're nothing. I'm the person who recorded your confession. Danielle showed him the wire, still recording, still capturing every word. You're right that I'm nothing. But this evidence? It's everything. Grant's eyes widened. He went for his backup weapon. Franco's shot was precisely placed. Center mass. Grant crumpled against the bulkhead, blood spreading across his expensive shirt. Danielle stepped back, breathing hard. Watched her former handler slide down the wall, watched the life leave his eyes. Felt nothing but exhaustion. He would have killed you, Franco said quietly, lowering his weapon. I know. The yacht had gone quiet, the violence over as quickly as it had started. Danielle and Franco stood in the blood-soaked corridor, 2 people who'd just burned their respective worlds to the ground. It's done, Danielle whispered. Franco pulled her close, and Danielle let herself collapse into him. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember she was still alive. Then she heard the click. Metal on metal. Unmistakable. Step away from my brother. Danielle turned to see Isabella standing 10 feet away, gun trained on Franco. Her expression was cold. Final. Isabella. Franco's voice was careful. You really thought I'd just forgive you? Isabella's laugh was bitter. That exposing Grant would be enough? This was never about Grant, Franco. It was always about you. About taking everything our father gave you and burning it all down. Danielle's weapon was still in her hand, but she couldn't get a clean shot. Not without Isabella potentially getting a round off first. Don't do this, Danielle said. Grant's dead. The corruption is exposed. We won. Don't throw that away for revenge. Revenge is all I have. Isabella's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot came from behind her. Mateo's rifle from the deck below. Precise. Professional. Isabella crumpled, the gun clattering from her hand. Franco ran to his sister, dropped to his knees beside her. Isabella. God. Isabella, stay with me. But Danielle could see it. The placement of the wound. The way blood pooled too fast. Isabella was dying. Family, Isabella whispered, blood on her lips. Always. Blood. She died with her eyes open, staring at the brother she'd hated and somehow, in those final moments, looked at with something almost like forgiveness. Franco closed her eyes gently, stayed kneeling beside her body. Danielle wanted to go to him, to offer comfort, but this grief was too private, too raw. She gave him space while Matteo coordinated cleanup, while Italian authorities were contacted, while evidence was secured. The sun was setting by the time they finally left the yacht. Danielle's wire had captured everything. Grant's confession, his corruption, the entire architecture of his shadow network exposed in his own words. She'd done what she'd set out to do. So why did victory feel like ashes in her mouth? The safe house where they regrouped was a villa on the Amalfi coast. White stone and blue shutters, perched on cliffs that dropped to the Mediterranean below. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like a tomb. Franco stood on the terrace, staring at nothing. He'd been there for 3 hours, hadn't spoken since they'd left the yacht. Danielle had given him space, but space couldn't heal what Isabella's death had carved out of him. She approached slowly, carrying 2 glasses of whiskey she'd poured without asking if he wanted one. Sometimes comfort wasn't about choice. You should drink something, she said softly. Franco took the glass but didn't drink. She was my sister, and I never knew her, never looked for her, never questioned why our family story had convenient gaps. Danielle leaned against the terrace railing beside him. You didn't know she existed. I should have. I should have wondered about my father's absences, my mother's carefully controlled narratives. I should have seen the shape of the lie. Franco's hands tightened on the glass. Instead, I benefited from her erasure, built an empire on the same violence that destroyed her life. Isabella made her own choices. She could have used what happened to her to build something better. Instead, she chose revenge, chose to become what she hated. Can you blame her? Franco finally looked at Danielle, and the pain in his eyes was staggering. She was thrown away because her mother was black, because her existence was inconvenient to the family narrative. She spent 25 years being invisible, being erased. Of course she wanted to burn it all down. Danielle thought about Isabella's eyes in those final moments. The way she'd looked at Franco with something beyond hate. Recognition. The acknowledgement that they were both products of their father's cruelty, just manifested differently. She saw you at the end, Danielle said. Really saw you. I think she understood that you weren't her enemy, that you were just another casualty of the same violence that destroyed her. Does that matter? She's still dead, still died hating me. She died being seen by you, being acknowledged as a Cataneo. Sometimes that's all we can give each other. Acknowledgement. Witness. Danielle set down her glass and turned to face Franco fully. You couldn't save her from your father's choices, but you saw her. You said her name. You claimed her as family when everyone else had erased her. That matters, Franco. His hand found hers, gripped tight. I don't know how to do this, how to carry this weight, the same way you've carried everything else. One breath at a time. One choice at a time. Danielle squeezed his hand back. And you don't have to carry it alone. Not anymore. Franco pulled her close, buried his face in her neck. Danielle felt his shoulders shake with grief he'd been holding back for hours. She held him, stroking his hair, murmuring wordless comfort. They stood on the terrace as the sun set over the Mediterranean, two people learning to hold each other's broken pieces without cutting themselves on the edges. Eventually, Franco pulled back. His eyes were red but clear. What happens now? You have your evidence. Grant's network is exposed. Where does that leave us? I have to testify, turn over everything to the Inspector General, face whatever consequences come from working with organized crime to expose a federal agent. Danielle's voice was steady despite the uncertainty. My career is probably over. I'll be lucky to avoid prosecution. I can protect you, provide resources, legal teams. No. Danielle's voice was gentle but firm. I have to face this on my own terms. If I hide behind your power, then everything Grant said was right. I become just another corrupt agent serving criminal interests instead of justice. Franco nodded slowly. And after? If you survive the bureaucracy and investigations and political maneuvering, what then? I don't know. Danielle touched his face, tracing the scar from the explosion. I'm figuring out who Danielle Yates is when she's not pretending to be someone else. When she's not hiding behind badges or covers or carefully constructed lies. I need to learn how to be real. Will you come back? The question was vulnerable. Raw. After you've figured yourself out? Will you come back to me? Danielle wanted to promise. Wanted to say yes with certainty, but she'd learned the cost of false promises. I want to, more than I can explain, but I can't commit to a future I can't see clearly. Can you accept that? Franco's smile was sad but genuine. I've spent my entire life building certainty through control. Maybe it's time I learned to live with uncertainty instead. He kissed her forehead. Do what you need to do, Danielle Yates. Become whoever you need to become. And if you find your way back to me, I'll be here. They spent that night wrapped around each other, speaking in soft voices about futures that might never materialize. Danielle told Franco about her childhood in Detroit, about losing her father to violence, about choosing the FBI because she believed in justice before she learned how easily justice could be corrupted. Franco told her about growing up in a criminal dynasty, about learning violence before he learned kindness, about trying to modernize something that was built on centuries of blood and tradition. They didn't make love. This wasn't about desire or passion. It was about witnessing each other, about being seen completely and accepting that sight. As dawn approached, Danielle got dressed, prepared to face whatever waited in Rome, in Washington, in the bright scrutiny of investigations and hearings and public exposure. Franco walked her to the car. Matteo waited in the driver's seat, expression carefully neutral. He'll make sure you get where you need to go, Franco said. And Danielle, thank you for saving my life, for seeing me as more than what I've done, for being exactly who you are. Danielle kissed him, slow and deep and full of everything she couldn't promise. Then she got in the car and didn't look back as they drove away. If she'd looked back, she would have seen Franco standing on the gravel drive, watching her leave like she was taking something vital with her. Maybe she was. 6 months later, Danielle sat in a cafe in Lisbon, watching tourists wander past with bags full of purchases and faces full of vacation joy. She'd been traveling for 3 months. Testimony before Congress complete. FBI career officially ended with a resignation that avoided prosecution but destroyed any chance of reinstatement. The hearings had been brutal. Peter Grant's corruption exposed in excruciating detail. 12 agents arrested. 4 senators forced to resign. An entire infrastructure of institutional rot burned clean by testimony and evidence, and Danielle's refusal to protect anyone involved. They'd offered her deals. Immunity in exchange for silence about certain powerful names. Witness protection if she'd disappear quietly. She'd refused everything, testified to the complete truth. Let the consequences fall where they would. The FBI offered no medal this time. Just a letter accepting her resignation and a notation in her file that read, "Separated, conduct incompatible with Bureau standards." Danielle had framed it, hung it on the wall of her small Lisbon apartment as a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing meant losing everything you'd built. She'd been drifting since then, figuring out who she was when she wasn't Agent Yates, discovering that Danielle without the badge was quieter, sadder, but also freer. She helped refugees navigate bureaucracy, volunteered at legal aid clinics, small acts of justice that didn't require institutional power. And she thought about Franco. Every day, every night. Wondered if he'd dismantled his empire like he'd promised. Wondered if he thought about her. Wondered if love could survive being built on ashes. Movement across the cafe caught her attention. A man sitting down at the corner table, newspaper obscuring his face. But Danielle recognized the hands holding that paper, the scars on the knuckles, the way he moved with controlled power even in simple gestures. Franco Cataneo looked different. Hair longer, beard grown out, wearing casual clothes instead of tailored suits. He looked almost normal. Almost. Their eyes met across the cafe. Danielle felt her breath catch. She stood, walked to his table, sat down without being invited. "You're supposed to be dead," she said softly. "The report said you disappeared. Presumed killed by rivals after Grant's network collapsed. I let them presume." Franco folded the newspaper. "Mateo runs the remaining legitimate operations. I signed over everything to a trust that supports families affected by organized crime. Then I disappeared." He paused. "I've been looking for you. I've been finding myself. Did you?" Franco's gaze was intense, searching. "Find yourself?" Danielle considered the question. "I found pieces. Learned that I'm quieter than I thought. That I like helping people on individual levels rather than systemic ones. That I'm still trying to figure out what justice means when institutions fail." She paused. "And I learned that I missed you. Every day. Even when I was trying not to. I missed you too. Enough that I gave up everything I'd built just to have a chance at building something different. Something clean." Franco's hand reached across the table, and Danielle met him halfway. "I started a foundation. For children abandoned by circumstances beyond their control. For people erased by systems that don't acknowledge their existence. Named it for Isabella." Danielle felt tears prick her eyes. "You're honoring her. I'm trying to make her death mean something. To use what our father's violence created, to heal violence instead of perpetuating it." Franco's thumb stroked her palm. "But I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands justice without institutions. Someone who sees people beneath their circumstances. Someone who runs toward fires instead of away from them. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership. Equal shares. Equal say. We build something together from the ashes of everything we've burned." Danielle thought about the FBI badge she'd surrendered. About the career she'd destroyed by choosing truth over convenience. About how empty her life had felt without someone who understood the weight of impossible choices. "I'm broken, Franco. The hearings, the testimony, losing everything I worked for. I'm not whole anymore. Neither am I. We're both broken." Franco stood, moved to sit beside her instead of across from her. Close enough that Danielle could feel his warmth. But maybe broken people can build something more honest than whole people ever could. Maybe we can create something real because we know what it costs to lose everything. Danielle leaned into him, let herself be held. "What if we fail? What if we can't overcome what we've done, what we are? Then we fail together." "But Danielle," Franco tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "We already survived fire. We dragged each other from flames when everyone else ran. I think we can survive anything else that comes." Danielle kissed him. Soft and deep and full of promise instead of goodbye this time. Around them, the cafe continued its business. Tourists laughed. Locals argued over football. The world kept turning. But for Danielle and Franco, something new was beginning. Not romance built on danger and deception. Something deeper, built on witness and choice, and the shared understanding that sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something worth keeping. "Okay," Danielle whispered against his lips. "Let's build something. Together." Franco smiled, and it reached his eyes. Made him look young, hopeful. Together. They left the cafe hand in hand, walking into the Lisbon afternoon. Two people who'd run through fire and emerged different. Scarred but alive, broken but healing. Behind them, ash. Ahead, uncertain futures. But between them, the choice to face those futures together. And sometimes, Danielle thought, Sometimes that was enough. Some people run from fire. They ran through it. And they came out different.